Okay guys, so we have one more thing to go over and it is called common factoring. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be factoring using a common factor. So let's take a look at our first page. So what is the biggest number that goes into all three of these numbers evenly? So when we take a look at it, we can have, so you want to look at what things can be multiplied. So to get 3, we can do 3 and 1, right? 3 times 1. There's nothing else that we can do. Let's take a look at 6. What can we multiply to get 6? We can multiply 2 and 3, and we can multiply 6 and 1. And now let's take a look at 15. So what can we multiply to get 15? We can multiply 15 and 1. We can multiply 5 and 3. And we can, I think that's it. And you can use your multiplication table for this too. So then when we take a look at these, what is the common number in all three of them? 3. Okay, so the number that can go into all three of them is 3. Let's take a look at the next one. So we have 8, so we can do 1 and 8. We can do 2 and 4. And I think that's all of them. For 12, we can do 1 and 12, right? Because 1 times 12 is 12. We can do 2 times 6, and we can do 3 times 4. And then when we take a look at 24, let's figure out what multiplies into 24. So we can have 1 and 24, right? 2 and 12. 3 and 8. 4 and 6. We can't multiply anything by 5, so I think we found them all. And let's go through and find the biggest number that goes into all of them. So does 8 go into any of these ones? It goes into this one, but not this one. What about 2? 2 goes into all of them. Is that the biggest one? We have 4, 4, and 4. So 4 goes into all of those evenly. And then we'll take a look at the next one. And we already found these right above it, right? So we have 1 and 12, 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. Then when we take a look at this one, what two things can multiply together to get 2? 2 and 1. Nothing else. And then to get 22, we can do 1 and 22. And we can do 2 and 11. Can we do 3? Nope. 4? Nope. 5? I think those are the only ones we can do. So let's take a look at what is the same in all three of them. We have 2, a 2, and a 2. So the biggest number that goes into all three of those evenly is 2. So all of these numbers here are called the greatest common factor. Okay, so all that means is it's the biggest number that divides in evenly into every single one of these numbers. Okay, so we need to know that for our next page. So when we're talking about equations, sometimes we need to use the greatest common factor to factor our equations that are in standard form. So what that means is that we need to find the number that can go into all three of these evenly. Okay, so that is our first step. So can 5 go into 20 evenly? Yep, because what times 5 equals 20? 4 times 5 equals 20. And can 5 go into 10 evenly? Yep. 2 times 5 goes into 10. So we can do 2 times 5. So what we can do is we can pull 5 outside of this bracket. Okay? So when we pull 5 outside, the numbers inside the bracket change. Sorry. So what's going to happen is inside this bracket, you're pretty much dividing everything by 5. Right? So it's now, because it's now out front, so we could divide this one by 5, which gives us 1. We can divide this one by 5, which gives us 4. And we can divide this one by 5, which gives us 2. Right? So when we can make these numbers smaller, we want to. Okay? So we're going to take a look at this one. So what number can go into all of these? We know that this can only be 2 and 1, right? So can we pull 2 out of this one? Yes, we can, because 2 times 3 is 6. Can we pull 2 out of 20? Yes, because 2 times 10 is 20. And what times, we have 1 times 2 is 2. So we bring the 2 out front. And then we bracket what we would multiply it by. And then we fill the rest in. So x squared, x. And we just factored using the greatest common factor. Okay, so let's take a look at the next one. So when we're taking a look at this equation here, so this is in standard form, we want to pull out something, right? Can we pull out 4 from the first one? Yep, because 4 times 1 is 4. Can we pull 4 out from the second one? Yep, because 4 times 4 is 16. Can we pull out 4 from 24? We most certainly can, because 4 times 6 is 24. So we bring the 4 out front, right, because we're pulling it out. And then we just fill the rest in with the information that's there, plus, x, and minus. Okay, so can we do anything with this one? Yes, we most definitely can. Does 3 go into 12? Yep, it does. So we can pull out 3 in front, and then we would bracket the rest of the terms. So 3 times what equals 3? And you can use your multiplication sheet for this. 3 times 1 is 3. And 3 times what is 4? Or sorry, is 12. And we get 4. And then we fill the rest in. And we have our equation. So what this is also showing you is when we pull 2 out front, 2x squared plus 6x plus 20 is how we said we're dividing them. You can honestly just do it like this. Sorry, that should be a 2. 2. And that would be like pulling the 2 out front. So then 2 divided by 2, we're going to get 1x plus 6 divided by 2 gives us 3x plus 20 divided by 2 is 10. Okay, so we're just pulling out a common factor to make these numbers smaller, okay? So when we look at this, what is the biggest number and variable? So the one thing about variables is if they all have an x can be brought out in front of it too, okay? So something that goes into all three of them, we can see is we have an x, so we can pull an x out front. Now what other number goes into this? Well, 3 goes into all of them, so 3 can be pulled out front because it is our greatest common factor. So we can do 3x, and then we can bracket these ones into what times what equals 9, or sorry, what times 3 equals 9? 3. And we've already pulled out a 3x in front, so it would just turn into a 3. And then this one would turn into a 2x, and this one would turn into a 5. Because when we take a look at if we were to multiply this back in, so remember when we were multiplying things back in because they're out front, right? So it would be like multiplying each of these by 3x. So then let's take a look. So 3x times 3 gives us 9x. 3x times 2x gives us 6x squared, because 3x times 2x, we get an x squared. And then 3x times 5 gives us 15x. So it's just pulling out the greatest common factor and making everything else smaller. So when we take a look at these numbers and letters here, what do they all have in common? Can 4 go into all three of them? Yep, it can. 4 can go into this one once. 4 can go into 12 3 times. And 4 can go into 24 6 times. So we'll bring 4 out front. Now is there a variable or a letter that goes into all three of them? We have an x here, an x here, and an x here. So we can take the x out. And so this just becomes a 1, because when you multiply it back in, it becomes a 4x. This one becomes a 3y, because when we multiply this back in, it becomes a 12xy. And this one, because we've pulled out a 4 and an x, this one becomes yz. Because when you multiply this back in, we would get 24xyz. And so our last one here, we have 12, 2, and 22. So what is the greatest common factor in all of these? First of all, let's take a look at the numbers. So the multiples of 12, we can do 1 and 12. We can do 2 and 6. We can do 3 and 4. Okay, the multiples of 2, we can do 1 and 2, and that's it. Multiples of 22, we can do 22 times 1, or 11 and 2, right? Because 11 times 2 is 22. So when we look, we can see a 2, 2, and a 2. So a 2 can be taken out of all three of these. And when we look, letters, there's an X in every single one of them, so we can pull an X out as well. And then we bracket, okay? And then we take a look at this, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. And we've pulled out one X, so we only have 2 left over. And then we took the 2 out and an X, so we only have 1x left over. And then when we divide 22 by 2, we get 11, right? So we can see them over here. So we get 11. And we took an x out already, so it's just 11. And that's it. So we are taking out the greatest common factor. So let's find the biggest number or variable that goes evenly into all of the terms and then factor it out. So when we look at this, we can see that 2 times 1 is a multiple of that, and we can't go any further, right? We can't times anything else to get that. What can we do with this one? We can do 2 and 3, and we can also do 6 and 1. So what do we see in both of them? We see a 2 and a 2. So we can pull the 2 outside of the bracket, which means you are pretty much dividing each of these by 2, right? So we can pull a 2 outside the bracket, and then we can also pull an x outside the bracket because an x is in both terms. So you can pull a 2x, and then this becomes, there's 1x left, plus, and then 6 divided by 2 gives us 3. So it becomes 2x bracket x plus 2. Okay, so then when we take a look at this one, we'll do another practice question. So something that is common in all of them, we can see that they're all multiples of 4, right? So we can pull a 4 right out front. And we can see that there's an a in every single one of them. So we can pull an a out front. And then we go through, and then 4 divided by 4 is 1. 4 divided by 8, or sorry, 8 divided by 4 is 2, and there's 1 a left over. And then 12 divided by 4 is 3, and there's no a's left over because we have a out front already. Okay, so there's multiple ways that you can look at it. Some ways are easier than others. I like to just pull the 4a out front. Some people, you can divide them. So again, we can divide, so we can go 4a3 divided by 4a, which is going to give us, sorry, I'm just going to give us 1a squared. Glad I did that, 1a squared, because there's 1a out front and there's 3 a's here, so we have 2 left over. Okay, so all you're doing is you are taking the greatest common factor out, and then in the brackets we put our leftovers, right? So we pulled 2x out, so these are our leftovers, and with our leftovers we are pretty much dividing them by whatever the greatest common factor is. Okay, so you guys are gonna have some practice questions. If you're still a little murky, you guys let me know, and I can find a more explanatory, I'm not Englishing very well, video online, okay?